Thanks very much, Pat. And the long and the short of it, by Michael O'Brien.
My entry into the workplace was more accidental than planned. Tom Shortt heard there was a young man in Barnan who had worked the bar trade in Dublin for some time, and so he asked my mother if my brother would consider working in the drapery trade. The assistant he had currently was about to leave for England. My mother explained that my brother was on his way to Killarney to take up seasonal work, but she had another boy at home who could do with some steady work. So, on the 10th of June 1968, I entered the unreal world of retail as an assistant in the gents department at Shortt's. Tom's mother and a female assistant called Rose ran the ladies section. The work was a far cry from feeding pigs, milking cows and the slurry I was used to. Now I was in from the weather, clean clothes at reduced prices, and a reasonable take-home pay. Tom was an avid reader. He was always buying books, small books, which were easy reading for him. He never read an entire book, but would peruse a book until he found something interesting, and then he would try to analyse it. One of his favourite works was Kipling's If. He thought the opening words, "If you can keep your head while all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you," were the greatest he had ever read. He should have remembered those words the day Templemore were playing football against Templetoohy in Miscellany. He was playing cornerback and his marker had just scored his third point. Christy Destilroe, his brother-in-law, playing at full-back, shouted to him to take care of that fellow. So Tom, not known for his skill as a footballer, did as he was told and ran straight into the corner forward, the next time he advanced on goal, grabbed him in a bear hug, and both ended up grappling on the ground. The Queensberry rules were not applied, and by the time they stopped hugging each other, all the other players, bar the two keepers, were having a go at each other. He had tried boxing when he worked in Dublin, but it was not to be, as his skin marked easily, and he would end up black and blue after a few rounds. The experience was worth it though, for when he returned to Templemore, he started up a boxing club for juveniles. He could be seen every training session, gathering up the gear which was stored in the shop and heading for the town hall, followed by a troop of juveniles like a scene from the Pied Piper of Hamlet. Not alone did he train the kids, but at times gave them clothes and footwear as well. He also gave them encouragement and confidence which would stand into them in the years ahead. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings, nor lose the common touch. Kipling again. Tom never lost the common touch, which was evident when one observed the attention he gave to his customers. He was always aware of his conscience, and often applied it when making a sale. He would go to great lengths to satisfy a customer's needs. He also had a stubborn side, especially when he thought he was being taken advantage of. One day a customer returned a pair of sandals, complaining that they were uncomfortable after 3 weeks' wear. He was actually wearing them when he walked into the shop. Tom took the price of the sandals from the till, handed the money to the customer, kept the sandals, and then watched the customer skip across the street in his bare feet. So much for conscience. Another comical incident was when a gentleman from the country asked for a pair of waders. Tom duly obliged and asked if he was to charge them to his account. The customer said, "No, I have a small job to do in the river and sure I'll return them after that." Tom said he couldn't oblige as the footwear would only be second hand if worn in that fashion. After much discussion, the customer leaves without the waders, muttering, "You're a hard man, Tom." He was a loyal supporter of the GAA and a staunch member of Templemore Aero, where he held several positions over the years. At one stage in the 1960s, he set up a team of minor hurlers drawn from surrounding parishes who had no minor teams themselves. This arrangement allowed young players with potential badly needed game time and experience. They had mixed success, but all the players were forever grateful to Tom. Tom's father, Johnny Shortt, and his mother, Catherine Ryan from Barnan, both served their time in a respectable establishment called Moffat's in Patrick Street in the town. They later married and set up their own shop in Main Street in the early 1900s. They had 9 children, with only Tom staying in the business. The business itself was a mixed bag. Described as having stock from a needle to an anchor, it became an institution over the years. Tom served his time to the trade in Lees of Rathmines and stayed 10 years in Dublin. He had to return home to take care of the business with his mother when his father became ill and subsequently died. His mother handled all the financial affairs of the business, as Tom had no interest in managing money. I remember the Saturday evenings when Mrs. Shortt would pay me from her bosom fund. She always put the takings of the day down inside her dress. She passed away in 1974, and Tom duly handed the financial responsibility and the checkbook to me, saying, "You write the checks, Mike, and I'll sign them." His daily trips to his friend Tony Maher in the library were a great release from the pressures of business. He would listen to Tony's interpretation of the Sunday Mass readings and how he would present the following Sunday. He would then return and try to educate me with the same reading. Another topic of education was a book by Dale Carnegie called How to Win Friends and Influence People. This book was all about how to handle people, how to make people like you, or how to make friends easily in everyday life. He showed me several quotes from this book. He must have felt I needed a lot of direction. I learned a lot from him over the years because he was such a humble and caring person. He always looked for the good in people and would encourage rather than knock a person. He slowly eased out of the business as his health deteriorated. All his life, he suffered from a condition called Raynaud's disease, which was a narrow veins. Hence, he had poor blood circulation. His hands were always cold to the touch. He could be observed around the shop wearing his peak cap on his head and fingerless gloves on his hands. His last few weeks on earth were spent in a nursing home in Thurles. His sister Eileen visited him every day at the 2 o'clock time, so as to leave the rest of the day for other visitors, of which there were many. I visited him in the evenings, and he would always ask to know where was Eileen. The mind works in mysterious ways. He died on the 27th of December 1996 at the age of 76. There was a huge turnout for his funeral, which was fitting for a man who had given all his life helping others. My wife and I took over the business in 1997 and traded for 20 years, with Shortt's name still over the door. Eileen Shortt died in March 2016 and the premises were put up for sale, so we had to vacate. Business ceased in Shortt's on the 8th of March 2017, when I locked the door for the last time after 49 years. We relocated down the street under our own name of O'Brien's. The day we opened, 4 kids pulled up outside the shop on their bicycles. One was overheard to say, "Let's go into the new Shortt's and have a look around." A new era had begun.